everyone, and welcome to The Trek. The Trek is a new Civics Unplugged series where community members participate in meaningful discussions on topics that are too often neglected when thinking about the future. Through prompting questions and provocations, we ventured together into complex but important conversations related to building the future and democracy. We understand that this work requires ongoing dialogue, but it's a journey worth trekking through. My name is Madison, and I'm a high school senior from Verdigris, Oklahoma, joined by some of our phenomenal community members and a special guest. And so we're going to start off our conversation about high school with a word association. So everyone can pick 1 to 3 words that they associate with high school, explain why, but before that, just give a brief introduction.
Okay, cool. Hey everyone, my name is Ashley. I am a senior in Vancouver, Washington. And I think of sheep and a joke. And I think that is pretty self-explanatory.
Oh, I'm next. Or is it me, Julia? Or are there 2 Julias? Okay. I was looking at the bottom name.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm last. Okay, now I see that. Okay, so I'm Julia. I'm 23. I live in Pennsylvania. The words I would associate with high school would be long. It felt really, really long compared to like college. And also dull. It's pretty dull experience for me.
What I'll put is.
Wait, who are you?
Oh, okay, I think the question mark. Oh, the question mark is figured out. Adam's here. Hey, Adam. So I'm Gary. I'm one of the co-founders of Civics Unplugged. I'm calling from New York City. I'm gonna put I was lucky because I was able to go to a state paid for boarding school called Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy, which allowed for a lot more freedom. But I know that's not the case for almost anyone else.
Adam, just to kind of like catch you up to speed, we're doing a word association. So you'll introduce yourself, pick 1 to 3 words that you associate with high school, and then just explain why you picked those words. And I would say that the 2 words I associate are standardized and killing curiosity. Standardized because of standardized tests and also because of the ways of learning are very standardized. And then I'd say killing curiosity because it seems like kids are encouraged almost to assort themselves into different types, like STEM kids, humanity kids, and that hinders a lot of curiosity and exploration. And then also just like the way the school is structured, where the ultimate objective is memorizing and passing tests as opposed to like genuinely exploring topics that people are interested in.
Hi, my name is Ruben. I am a junior in high school right now. I'd say that high school is currently stressing for first, and second of all, I'd say it's pretty short because I feel like just yesterday I was a freshman and now I'm a junior getting ready for college, and yeah, it's pretty nerve-wracking to me.
All right, let's see. I'm Elliot. I'm co-founder of Big Picture Learning. I've done a lot of things in education. I've started over 200 schools around the world that are very innovative and different, that allow to start with students' interests and choices. I had a hand in starting the school that Gary went to, that he mentioned. And if I were to classify high schools that are not ours, and some few others, I would say that you're all right on the money. They're rule bound. They don't allow you to have voice or choice, much voice or choice. And they're segregated.
we'll allow you to break this rule, the 3-word rule, because you're a special
Wow.
guest.
Oh no, I was hearing that rule being broken the whole way through. No problem.
That's cool. I didn't know that about you, about IMSA. All right, Adam.
So I haven't done mine yet, but I have come up with some words. So I think like the structure of high school is pretty divided. So like that's in there too. Even though I'm a freshman, I just started. I've noticed a lot of division and stuff. And then there's also like a lot of like overwhelming stuff like during. So I think it's like very overwhelming, and also it's like overwhelming and divided. But there's some good stuff about it too. But yeah, it might be because of online school, but for me, it's personally overwhelming. So.
Oh wow, yeah, you started during the pandemic. Wow.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing those. Now we can go into like the actual part of the conversation where anyone can pose a question or a provocation, and then we can start talking. So if anyone has one, feel free to go ahead and pose it.
Madison, do you have anything?
I was trying to think of some variation of what do you think is some of the biggest problems with the way high school is structured? No.
Sure, why don't we start there?
I mean, I feel like there are so many places to go with this question. One of the first things I think about is like how we measure learning and like what counts as learning. I think right now learning is measured by kids spending like X hours in a seat in a classroom listening to a teacher. We don't really consider other forms of learning like outside of the classroom, like in people's like homes and their cultures and their communities. Like I feel like there is a very limited version of what counts right now.
I think I had like this issue throughout high school and even college. I guess it's just kind of like education in general, like a lot of the common core classes that you have to take versus like the electives that you're choosing are the common core classes are often the most overwhelming when it comes to like assignments and all of that. So I think so much focus went into those common core classes, and it was the kind of focus where I would just try to remember things for an exam, and then it would kind of go in one ear out the other. And then it was hard to focus on those classes that I actually chose and wanted to enjoy, because there was just so much stress from these other courses. And it ended up, like I said, like a lot of learning went in one ear out the other, which is obviously a waste. So.
Yeah, I would say that there's a couple issues that come to mind, but it also, like, when I start just thinking about the issues and then my mind goes to solutions, I really understand why they are issues, because they're not easy things to solve. So like my mind goes to freedom in education. So I think of like, so for instance, I'm taking a world history class right now, and I haven't really been enjoying taking the class. But then I realized, oh wait, like on my own, I'm watching documentaries literally about the same thing. But it's just the fact that I'm choosing what I want to learn is making the experience completely different, even if the content is virtually the same. And so I think that one of the issues is that people don't feel like they have the freedom of choice. Like, it's one thing to pick what class you want to take, but to pick the content is something completely different. But in that same breath, I can also see that, like, that's a huge, like, responsibility and something that, quite frankly, a lot of kids probably shouldn't be trusted with, because how can you ensure that people are learning if they have complete liberty over their education? And so it's a really fine line to walk. And so that's an issue, but again, solution is a completely different conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, also one of my biggest issues with high school was like once you turn 18 and you're about to graduate high school, you have to make this like $30,000+ decision on what you want to major in, and you had no internship or any type of like professional experience in high school. Like at least my school, we didn't have like internship opportunities, even just shadowing opportunities. So it's just a lot of pressure as a young person. You kind of just pick what hopefully will make you financially stable, but also you're spending a ton of money and don't even know if you like this major. So you're not really set up for a great decision going to college, I feel like.
Yeah, I want to echo what Ashley just put into the chat. And maybe you can talk about the credit requirements, but the grouping by kids by age. I didn't realize just how valuable it would be until I saw the dynamics in Civics Unplugged of like freshmen and seniors and juniors and high school graduates, and you know, I guess me being able to interact with all of you kind of all the time, whenever, and people older than me as well. And I realized that kind of just learning from diverse people across age, but also geographically, racially, by gender, et cetera, et cetera. It's really lacking in most schools. And Elliot, in our conversation this week, put it really well that most schools are really, really segregated in the sense that, I mean, some are within the school, but a lot of schools are like entirely like one race or socioeconomic class, and that's a big problem.
A problem that I noticed is that it's like structured for like a lot of people. So it's like structured like as like a 9 to 5 job. So like 5 days a week. My school, it's like most schools it's around like usually like 7:45 to like 3 o'clock. So it's around the same hours too. And then you have to like sit down a lot too, which I heard is bad for like your health. So it like encourages you to like go to like it was built for like people to become factory workers. It's an old system, and I think that we should definitely like take a look at it and like maybe think of some new ideas, since it's been a while since like it was first created and not a lot has changed.
Yeah, Adam, it's really interesting that you bring that up for a couple of reasons. Like I saw something in an article one time, and it was like showing the evolution of technology over the past century and different things like that. But if you look at a classroom, virtually nothing has changed except for the technology within it. Like, kids still sit and look towards like the board, and like and so much of it is similar. And also what you said about a 9 to 5 job, like that can be closer to the truth, because it almost makes it seem like learning is a job, when learning is something that's like, even after high school and college, it's something that you're still doing, and it's like a lifelong pursuit, and it's like the opposite of a job. Like, because if you have like the connotation that like a job is something that you don't enjoy doing, learning, when done in the right way, is really enjoyable and fulfilling. And so again, like it seems like we structure school in the opposite way that it should be, and putting it in that framework of like a job.
Yeah, Madison, like I feel like as an adult, I value learning like so much more. Because in high school, I remember like my senior year, it's like I would be counting down. Like I enjoyed my high school experience, but just like how tedious and dull it was, I'd just be like counting down the mornings. I'd be like, oh, I only have to do this many more mornings, which was like obviously terrible. So
Yeah, and like this speaks to kind of what people have been putting in the chat, but like I think one of the biggest challenges with how school is structured right now is definitely like it's not connected to the real world like at all. And I feel like that's what makes learning seem like work. Like it's I guess it's kind of counterintuitive, but like you're learning for the purpose of like taking a test, and then like that's where it ends, and like there's no like further application of it. Like I guess like people always talk about like, oh, like project-based learning is so cool, but like I literally like hate project-based learning because like if that project isn't myself or isn't like a meaningful problem in the community or like a meaningful issue that I actually care about, then I don't care about the project. Like I don't know. I guess like maybe it's just me. But yeah, I didn't really vibe with that. But also like I feel like in terms of like real world learning, I feel like we're getting closer to that, right? Like with like career and technical education, like work-based learning, like being able to do internships like in high school and get credit for them. But I feel like part of the challenge with how school is structured right now is students are like tracked into pathways. Like you have like your AP students, you have your honor students, you have like your CT students, you have your gen ed students, and like you can only take classes within your track. And so most AP students have never experienced a CTE class. Like they have never like done an internship since it like drops your weighted GPA, which like totally sucks because they don't get to experience like a whole different like aspect of high school. Whereas like if you're like tracked into gen ed, like you'll never experience like the freedom of an AP class and of teachers who trust students to learn on their own. Like I feel like there are meaningful learning experiences in school, but like we don't get to experience all of it. Like we experience a tiny slice of what school offers.
Well said. Ruben, I saw you typing in the chat. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the way teachers, like we've mentioned already, teachers just seem to like teach us just for like our next exam. And then, oh yeah, you have to get ready for SATs, for example. This and that, like that's our main goal, you know, and it's not like we don't have an opportunity to do other stuff. Perhaps we want to learn other subjects, but we have to, our main focus has to be on tests all the time, basically. Like that's the whole purpose of passing the tests and hopefully, you know, having AP classes next year, etc. It's all about work for me.
yeah, there's nothing very like compelling or fulfilling except like the numbers that you're getting back from your work, which is just like your grades. Otherwise, anything outside of that, you don't really feel any return, I feel like.
Hi, I am sorry for joining late. My name is Chabu, and I'm a proud builder of this community. I think this is such an important topic to talk about. And I think like one of the first things that I think of when it comes to issues within high school is just like the way that we approach development. Ruben, you kind of mentioned this earlier, just the idea of like we're working towards the next test or like the stats that we need to achieve. And I also think like in a much wider scale, schools work the same way, and they're just like not developing to like create better students or more conducive learning environments or modern learning environments. It comes down to like, how are your students' SAT scores performing? And there's also not like a level of connectivity between schools, like it's very board to board. So just like the way that they approach development between students personally, and then also as like an institution is very closed-minded and a bit dated in a way that kind of gets in the way of their own success.
Yeah, Elliot, I noticed you've been in the chat, and I'd like to hear your stance on issues, and then kind of like what you've been able to do through your work to try and tackle some of these.
Well, we are all public schools all over the world. We have about 70 in the United States. We influence more schools than our big picture schools. And we're trying to change American public education. We've been doing it. Me and another guy started it 51 years ago. So we have a learning plan at our school for every student. Our students in high school, we have our own college called College Unbound. You can look that up as well. We're pre-K through 16. Every student has a learning plan. They're at the learning plan meeting with their parents. And if they are not with their parents because their parents are in another country, somebody who's an adult acts as an advocate in that meeting. Their mentor, and 2 days a week, our students are out of school, that they choose to be out with mentors around their interests. And those interests can change. They're not in a pathway. They're in their own journey. And every semester, students present their learning to their parents, other students, their mentors, and advisors, who we call teachers. We have an advisory system, community meetings that meet 3 days a week to start the day off at school. School looks completely different. There are no formal classes. There are classes for those students who want to be in classes, and students take college classes online. One-on-one, small group based on your need. Students travel all over the world as part of their getting out of school, which is something we call leaving to learn. So it looks completely different than a high school experience in their public schools. We have proof points all over the country and the world that say that with the same amount of money, this can be done. So I wouldn't disagree with anything that you're saying. And my question to Gary the other day was, given what you're writing here, which is very rule bound and pretty oppressive, how can you have a civics conversation in a school that's not practicing civics? That's going to probably turn it into some kind of class or whatever. And what is the best place for you all to do your work? That's kind of what I've been talking to Gary and a few other people in your organization around. That's a quick gander at what we do as schools, but our students start their own businesses, write books, do all kinds of things. The key words are with and want, that adults are with you on your journey. And that answers that question around, well, it's not a free for all. It's got a lot of structure, and you heard some of the structures, and you have to want to learn. Who my mentor, Seymour, talked about a lot, called productive learning. You have to want to learn. And there's all different ways. And Ashley, who talked about project-based learning, I couldn't agree more. That's why we do interest-based learning. And sometimes it's a project, sometimes it's a venture, sometimes it's direct instruction when you need it and want it. So those are real choices with somebody saying to you, yep, this is a good notion. You should, give this a whirl and try it this way. We have our own credential for graduation now that we just started with our schools in Australia, that we're going to make into hopefully a credential internationally, where there are no tests, that the standards are your standards that the student chooses, and that you can gain admissions into any colleges and universities or go into the workforce, because all students means all students, means all. So that's a little bit about what we do. My question, to flip your question, is what are the ways that a high school that you're talking about here can meet your needs, or can it? But there may be some good stuff in there that says, okay, what you want to get done can be done within the framework of the high school that Doesn't sound very good over here. So that's my question, but that's not what we're supposed to do. But that's what's lingering in my head for you. We already know what high schools can't do. What can they do in the form that they're in now? Or maybe that's not enough. So, you could stay on your question. I didn't mean to violate your
No, it's okay. I mean, people can answer either.
protocol.
People can go back if they had something to add on there, but we can hop onto this question as well. I like it.
Meet the needs of Civics Unplugged. Meet your needs. Yeah. Can they? And you may not. It may not be a big list. That's all right.
So one thing that you were pretty blunt about when we were meeting, Elliot, was high schools matter, at least because that's where the kids are.
That's right.
And so we can always, like, even if like a school leader or, aka principal, etc., is super regulated on what they can do, they can evangelize for an out of school sort of program that could involve a lot of kids that met each other at the high school. So you can sort of just treat it as like something like Civics Unplugged could use it as a ideally a win-win for that school leader and the teachers, where because of the recommendations of the teachers and the promotion from the teachers and the administrators, like now the kids are getting this learning experience. I'd say that's one of the more easy ways that a school that is very regulated or structured in a poor way can meet our kids' needs.
Yeah, I'd also say if we're talking about like high school, like fundamentally structured as it is now, I just think that they need to be as adaptive as possible and also genuinely listen to what students are saying that they want. So I think honestly, the pandemic has forced schools to be more flexible. So before, the school that I go to, like, very traditional structure, like everyone takes the same classes. I think my school has like 2 AP classes, so it's like everyone's doing like the exact same thing. And so what the pandemic has kind of like been a forcing function for is allowing for people to do those options. And so it's allowed me to transition to completely online, which turns out is way better for my learning style, but it's the last semester of my senior year. And what would my education have been like if I would have learned that when I was a freshman or even earlier? So just giving as many options as possible and also like encouraging people to utilize those options. Because before the pandemic, I don't think that I would have considered it. It was painted in a really unattractive light. And then also in that same breath, like genuinely listening to the concerns of students. I know that my school has had school board meetings where they invite a student because like just to kind of like show that they're listening, but they don't actually, it's kind of like a formality. And so I think that those two play hand in hand, but I would like to see more of that within our current structure and moving forward, rethinking what high school looks like.
Love that. I've been thinking about, so I don't think that I don't know much about like how hard it is to become homeschooled or unschooled or whatever those terms are. And I think there's a big problem that I'd say like a lot of parents and kids that would really benefit from that don't know much about it either, right? And there's like there's probably, Elliot, you would know, there's probably state by state differences in regulations. I'm sure there's like national policies as well that encourage it or discourage it. So I just think more freedom of like, I guess just even looking back like 12 months ago, like my own view of what school choice was it's you're either going to the public school or you're going to that nearby charter school. I didn't think about that there's actually a lot of different options, but then this compounds the inequality in our country because a lot of people don't have help in understanding all those different choices. So yeah, I mean, I would say like a lot of how kids who are currently in high schools could benefit are actually from people that are not incentivized to keep them in the high school.
So I think it's also important to preface as we like dive into this conversation that I had a very unique high school experience that was like very much specific to me. So I'm kind of speaking from that. But when I think about like how high school can meet your needs, it also forces you to become like very familiar with like the standards of operation in the world that exist right now. Um, like as I think about how in the future, like I'm probably going to spend more time in more innovative spaces, it makes sense for me to be aware of what less innovative spaces operate like. I think that it's informative so that I kind of know where people are coming from. There are skills that are unattractive, but like very necessary to the old world, as we like to call it. And so school kind of forces you to become familiar with that, teaches you um, what it means to like write an informative email to administration that doesn't really want to hear from you. And so it kind of teaches you those skills so that like when you move on to more innovative spaces, you almost know what you're working towards or like what underlying goals you're trying to avoid.
I think that's interesting though. Like, I don't know if people should have to experience a negative high school experience to know how to be innovative and build things. I would almost think that if you were in a high school that was like, again, this wasn't my experience, I don't know, but I would predict that if you were in a space that was constantly evolutionary, it would teach you that and help you better navigate it. Because I think of like with CU, because of what I learned with CU and like how we're constantly innovating, I feel like I've kind of like adopted that and kind of like adopted that spirit that I could now like easily implement into other spaces, which I know school didn't afford me that that ability. So maybe it's a little bit of both, but I think that I don't know. Those are just my thoughts. Adam or Ruben, you have any thoughts on this?
So for me, like so I think like high school, like and like some and like I noticed like that. So like grades is like part of the structure, but grades only really measure like the student's effort. Like sometimes they're not interested in what they're learning, so they aren't going to give as much effort into what they're learning. Um, and yeah, and also like grades measuring academic performance, like online. I've heard about like students with 4.0 GPAs, but when they went to online school, now they're at like 2.5. So I don't think that. So I think we should just change it to like grades don't like measure like academic performance. It should be like a different like system. So like that um that measures what you do learn, not like how good you are at like a subject. I don't know, but yeah, that's more of like a growth mindset kind of thing. But yeah.
something along the lines of, are you kind of pursuing what's meaningful to you and showing that you're on your path to realizing your potential, your like unique potential, right? Which is very hard to kind of turn into a factory model, which is why we're seeing the standardization that we see.
Okay, I kind of want to do this. I'm going to pose a provocation. I'm going to say in defense of high school. So like meaning like how high school is structured right now.
Well, I also wanted to add I wanted to respond to Chabu's point. Chabu, I don't think you need to be convinced that we don't need to manufacture less innovative spaces. You're just try doing anything with the DMV or anything with the government, really. I think it's okay if your primary learning environment is inspiring and innovative and all that.
No, I think I wholeheartedly agree. It's just like, it almost like gives you the experience, you know what I mean? Like it's an unpleasant experience, but you can definitely like turn it into an asset by responding to it as, well, at least now I know like these are the specific practices and infrastructures that I wouldn't want to replicate somewhere else.
Elliot, I don't know if you would know this, but I haven't even asked why. IMSA, Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy, where I went to high school, was only for sophomore, junior, and senior year. And I wonder, even if it like was unintentional, if the reason why they made most, or it was recommended that you do freshman year was like, so you learn how the typical high school is structured. So I guess that's what I thought of that when Chabu brought up the you almost need like a reference point to what.
Yeah, that's not the reason. It's a good reason, but it's not the reason. They're schools like, and they're selective admissions schools based on students' interests and talents for the most part. It's a farm system, so they're doing a little bit of weeding out in the ninth grade, and they don't want to mess around with younger students.
Oh, makes sense. That's pretty
So
practical.
they want you a little bit more coming in a little bit more serious, a little older. Yeah, you know, right. It's a good question. It doesn't have an answer that's, you know, packaged the way it should be, or could be.
That makes sense. It's not a flashy narrative, right? But it practically makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone rushing to defend their high school experience?
I could. I would say I'm definitely in defense of my teachers and some of my school administration, because obviously they don't have the capacity to drastically change the way the school is structured. And I think that the structure of school doesn't just hold back us, the students, it also holds back the teachers as well. A lot of the teachers that I know, like one of my teachers is like a second mom to me, and she changes what she can, but obviously she can't do something as drastic as like change the way the grading system is, change what is expected to be taught on a test. And so I think that I would just be in defense, especially of the teachers. And I know that a lot of them do everything that they can to make the educational experience more enjoyable for the students, but they can only do so much with what they're afforded.
That's interesting, Madison. I wonder if like how much of the hesitation people have of talking about the high school system is because they know that there's a lot of great people inside it, and they worry that it's kind of diminishing. It's like in some way jeopardizing like the careers of good people. Yeah.
So at my school, a lot of the high school teachers, like it was built on a specific philosophy. And so a lot of the teachers that went to that school were like hand selected and like also wanted to be a part of that school. So I totally agree with Madison in the sense that like, even though the school's like attempts towards doing something different were unsuccessful, the teachers like carried the spirit of those attempts. And so I feel like in the span of like high school and the education system and like in theory what it could have been or what it could achieve for students, a lot of teachers are like the vessels of that energy, even though it's absent in the system overall. But on a separate note, in defense of high school, I think that like one core component of high school is just like the camaraderie that you get for the people your own age. It's like one of the few spaces where you just like get forced to meet certain people that you may not interact with normally, or you get to have like a continuation of friendships that you've had for a very long time. And that's something that's like really difficult to replicate kind of anywhere else in life, aside from like sports. And even like out of college, like I know a lot of people talk about like not being able to do that quite as easily. So I think that it's also just like a space to like get to know people from your own age and then also just kind of go through phases of personal iterations. And that's also totally normal in high school. Yeah, I think that's like one of the perks, I guess, of the high school experience.
Should be.
So for me, what I like about high school, so in defense of it, high school has given me a lot of opportunities I wouldn't have had before. Now there's like electives and stuff. Like I get to choose some of my electives. And then like as Chabu mentioned earlier that like you get to meet like a lot of people. My high school, we like to do a lot of group based work, so I've met a lot of people that I wouldn't normally meet. A lot of them are quiet people, like introverts. So I would have met them if I wasn't in a group with them. But yeah, I've had some good times too. Like it's fun to present with my group, like our ideas and stuff in engineering and all that. And then, but yeah, and also I'm part of student council, and we did like a wellness symposium like in November, right before Thanksgiving break, and all the students loved it. It was really good. So it's just like those like gatherings, like we do like a thing called town halls where we get like together the whole school and we like talk about stuff, like congratulate students. So it's very, very fun. So that sort of thing.
The way I see high school is definitely for me, at least. There's many clubs. You get a variety of different things you can explore. Uh, they do give us internships opportunities from time to time, but pretty much high school just gives you the opportunity to develop yourself as an individual. Like you get to see how you accommodate with people. Perhaps you like working with people, perhaps you don't. You get to see what you do like, what you don't like. Kind of school kind of like makes you into the person you will be in the future. It helps, but it can also not help depending on choices one makes, etc. So yeah.
One thing that your answers got me thinking of was that it kind of forces you to bump up against a bunch of different types of people. And so you learn a lot about yourself and others through that experience that you wouldn't have sort of voluntarily chosen. So Elliot had a question. How many of you have an advisory system in your school? Or had one? Or if you don't know what that is, then you probably don't have one, right, Elliot?
Yeah, it's that's a big thing for us, and we started them in the United States 50 years ago, where every student is connected to an adult who's an advocate for that student throughout the time they're in high school. So they know you academically, socially, emotionally, what your interests are, and you meet every day in that advisory. Our schools are even more loaded around advisory for what that means in terms of your time and also your freedom of movement in a school. Yeah, advisory is a great idea, and it stops a lot. It prevents a lot of things from happening because an adult knows if somebody's in crisis, if things are going well, and they know quite a bit about you, and that forms a very sincere relationship with the teacher and with the school. The whole school, it's a culture. Everybody does it.
Also, I didn't have an advisory system, but there is one teacher in my school, the one that I mentioned earlier. She basically stepped up and was everyone's advisor, everyone's counselor, like for so many students. And if I was like, I've called her like multiple times, but like, oh, I'm having like this college crisis, I don't know what to do, or like when I was switching to online, I was like talking to her about it the whole time, and just like even just like stuff about life. And so I guess that's why I'm in so defensive of teachers, is because I've had teachers kind of like step in and fill in those roles, and I'm sure that's been the case for many people as well. But
yeah, that's what we're talking about, is formalizing that process in small groups where every student is known well. Then you know, and I don't know the size of your school, but our schools are small. But in every school, and for every student, that's really not the case, and that has to be made the case. And it's some kind of affinity that you formed with that teacher, and she's got too many students to look after, in the kind of way you got to look after and touch base, and connect. So that's the whole purpose of a whole system-wide approach to something like advisory.
I think that this system might exist in my old high school, but it kind of got buried in bureaucracy.
That's right.
So they, like, I know for a fact that like I was assigned to a counselor, and I was like a part of the section of the alphabet that was assigned to her. And in theory, I'm sure I'm allowed to like go talk to her about like my social well-being as well as my academic well-being. But in practice, like I only really came to her when I needed like letters of recommendation for graduation and stuff like that, and for like applying to university. So I think it's really important to like, it's sad though, because like on a surface level, that's an amazing thing to have. But it's kind of sad because I guess it's like the education system isn't conducive for that system to thrive within it.
Well, it can be. And what you're describing is a traditional system that is not really a just-in-time system and doesn't touch base every day. And there's a lot more to advisory than what I just talked to you about. So it can be, because we've done it, and a few other networks have done it as well, of public schools, very successfully. In most cases, it's because of the overbearing of the culture of the school, which isn't conducive to doing that, is worried about test scores and that other stuff, and turning the page curriculums. You don't get there, and that's what happens. That kind of culture wins over, unless somebody really pushes it and makes it into the dominant culture in the school.
I love how you kind of started off that phrase though with that, like, it could, like it can, it's just a matter of doing it right.
Absolutely. I mean, we have, and others have had the proof points over the years. The systems are, as you were watching, the standard operating procedures, SOPs of systems are very difficult to change and manage. They don't want to move. There's an entropy there, a willingness to talk, but not a willingness to action. It's hard stuff, what you're doing, and this conversation around schools is even more complex and complicated than a program in a school and where it fits. Or if you do it in a school, which I question Gary around, and I only spoke to Gary so far in Thanis, but this is your decisions that you have to make going forward, not mine.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm getting from this conversation is a lot of really valuable, almost like insights from first principles, what it takes to support young people's flourishing. And one of the ingredients is to, like, and I don't think I'll forget this, is for someone to be truly known and understood, right, by like an advisory type person. Like, I would wonder what percentage of kind of adolescents in the US have an adult that isn't their parents that really knows who they are. And how much does that affect their development or stunt their development?
Or even if their parents know.
Oh, I mean, totally, because there's a strong disincentive for a child to share everything with their parents, or even a lot, which is sad, but it's just the reality.
Right. Well, it's a big mistake, and it's been going on for thousands of years. You can look at one of the most famous paintings in the world, The Flight of Icarus, and that's what it's all about. Nobody's paying attention to a young person in the whole village. Everybody's facing away as Icarus, wings burn up and he goes into the sea. That's the lesson of the plowman and The Flight of Icarus. And so it's up to us. We figured it's up to us to do something about that. And that's part of it is advisory. A part of it is connecting it to an adult outside the school and organizations outside of school where you're doing stuff that you want to do and people know you well. So, yeah, there's a lot of work ahead. That's the good news. A lot to do.
No doubt. Madison, should we do the reflection period?
Yeah, we can go ahead and move on to that. I need to send the link. So let me get the link here in the Zoom chat so you all can look over these notes. And when you have a reflection ready, just shout it out and I'll write it down. I can go ahead and get started. I'll say that this has kind of helped me realize how I should have conversations about and think about reforming systems in the future, because it's not just thinking about the issues, it's like also thinking about what is kind of like working in the system. And I think I learned that with everyone's responses to like the In Defense of High School provocation, because it's like, it's not that we should necessarily throw everything out about high school. A lot needs to be changed, but obviously people do have positive experiences in high school. I know that for a portion of time, I really enjoyed the high school that I attended. And so it's also really important to validate and learn from those positive experiences. And just because a lot of people have overall negative experiences in high school doesn't mean that it should be totally discredited. And so, yeah, I think that's definitely been a paradigm shift for me.
Well, you're the one that posed the question, so you can think yourself.
I'm definitely coming from a similar headspace with Madison. I think that like as we push for more out of our education system, we also need to like appreciate what's there, and treat it not as like the enemy, but like a system that we're working alongside with like great people in there already. And like that also just means that we're coming from a place of love, which means that that entire dynamic would change and be way more productive. And I think Elliot's like a great embodiment of that, you know, just like looking at the education system as something that can be worked with and not against.
So for me, what I like reflected on this was that so like the high school system, it has it's like benefits, and it also has like it's like cons and stuff. So what I learned is that like for our next step, we should keep the good and then like try and improve on the bad. But like so like thinking of like a way to to like reform the bad in like a good way. So like for so like making high school more open than more closed in. Um so yeah, like basically changing the system to be more creative instead of like closed, and yeah, just opening up more opportunities, and just helping it help students thrive in the world, and not end up in a bad situation.
I like what you said, Adam, at the end. Like, it shouldn't just be like educating students, it should be making them thrive. I think that's something completely different as well.
Something I'm going to definitely take away is, and just keep doubling down on, is really getting to know the people who I'm hoping flourish. Uh, I so Elliot, I have sometimes more than a dozen one-on-one calls a week, often more than that, and they're just like week. It's not like just a transactional thing or a performance review. It's like just a check-in, like an actual check-in, like half an hour with a lot of kids, sometimes teammates, sometimes partners. And I didn't, um, I mean, everyone just, it's amazing just how much more capable people feel when they feel loved and understood, and that you're not just there to like get something from them. So I realized, like, more than anything, more than like a manager or whatever, I think the role that I sort of play is more of like a advisor in one of your like big picture schools. And I'm realizing that there's a conflict of interest if you're the teacher and the advisor, because you're trying to get them to pass like a test and look good, like average test score, like average whatever whatever like a state test might be. And so having different adults play different roles in a learning system, I never really thought about just why it's important to have that distinction, but it's cool to just think about.
Personally, I feel like there must be a type of connection between the students and the high school, for example, because if like you mentioned before, like many of us have mentioned, uh, if there is no type of motivation, then students won't thrive, as Adam mentioned. Students would just be stuck in a place where, yeah, I learned this, I learned that, but what am I going to use it for? What am I going to be? And then high school also stresses, but it also stresses college. Like in a couple of years, you have to choose the college you have to go to. You have to choose. You have to make important decisions that are gonna affect you in the future, and maybe negatively, maybe positively. But it's all from the origin, basically, in high school. So yeah.
Elliot, you're muted.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed hearing from you and your comments and participating with you. It was a very good conversation, and I'm always trying to take away a few things from a conversation like this. And one of the things of the many is students need to be known well by somebody in their school as an adult, always. And that's a big part of what we do. And they have to know one another as well. And seems like you're using all this online pieces in some very valuable ways. That's getting to the hearts of issues, and you have a very nice protocol that you set up. So keep going, and my congratulations to you from coming from all different places around the country, I guess.
And the world will there's always like a different group every time.
Oh, great. So very nice. Very nice.
We got applications from 47 countries. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see how that goes.
Right. I was on a call today with our schools from all at once from Australia, Kenya, New Zealand, and the US.
Wow.
Yeah.
School. Do you facilitate exchange at all with?
Yeah. Well, they happen informally. It's very difficult in this last administration to do student exchanges. If you're not a full-time student, college student, or full-time student in a high school, a regular school, and you're just going for a week or so, or a month, they made it very, very difficult. Not the other countries, the US, immigration. So that stopped us from doing some of the work that we had been doing in the past. But things always change. Those rules change all the time. So stay on the watch. We did, one of our schools, affiliate schools, is in Oakland called Thrive. And for 3 months a year, students are away in a foreign country.
Oh.
And in a country like Myanmar. Culturally, mostly in non-European countries is where they go. So, it can be done, and you should, think about that. And there's organizations like Summer Search that give out scholarships to students from all over the United States to do that kind of work in the summertime. You should know about that. So I'm just giving you a little heads up.
Can you what's it called? Summer what?
Summer Search. You develop work that you want to do first in the United States for the first year, and then overseas to a place of your choice. It's a very, it has been a very good program for a lot of our students. We took advantage of it because we credit learning, whether it happens in or outside of school, which is another point that somebody raised. Where do you learn? And when do you learn? But school gets all the credit for thinking that you learned it in school when you might have learned it outside of school. Interesting. It's very complicated. Complex is the better word, not complicated. So all good. Well, it's great to meet everybody. Gary, thanks for inviting me into your
Sure.
trek. I think it's a trek.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a trek. Thank you, Ruben and Adam. There are some of our 2021 fellows. Chabu and I were 2020 fellows, and so they're about to start the fellowship. Very exciting. So thank you all for coming, and thank you, Elliot. It was really cool to have your perspective, especially because a lot of the issues that we're raising, you're like, we're already working on that. We already got to.
Ben, right? You should talk to some of our students and get another perspective on that too. And I think Gary's working on that, or somebody in Civics Unplugged. So getting I don't know how it works, but you have fellowships or something like you just
Yeah,
said.
we're trying to run an experiment related to getting kids credit for civic learning that happens inside and outside of high schools. So we will keep you posted on that, Elliot. You will be abreast of it, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
But let's see.
Just very nice meeting everybody. That's all.
Yep. All right. Thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Bye.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.